Are you ready for talk 2? One thing that is slightly different than you expected, it says Martin de Keijzer here. This is not Xavier Dekeyster. Xavier was supposed to do this talk, but in the middle of the previous talk he got a call and had a family emergency, so he really had to run. So we wish him all the best, but Martin, our very own PHPBenelux, Martin was brave enough to have a similar session. So you'll be seeing Vagrant just as you would see it by Xavier, but in an improvised way. So it's like improvised comedy. So before we start, because this is a big deal, thank you, Martin, for volunteering. I would all like you to say all at once, thank you, Martin. Here we go.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay. So, let's first start with a little introduction. I'm Martin de Keijzer, Dutch web developer, also PHPBenelux board member. I work as a mobile specialist for iBuildings, and if you want to contact me, you can reach me on Twitter or via my website. So, today is going to be heavily improvised. I just heard 10 minutes ago that the speaker wasn't able to do his talk today. So I said, well, okay, I know enough about Vagrant to tell everyone about it, how it works and how to get started. So it probably won't be the same as the original speaker would tell you, but let's see how far we get. So we're going to talk about Vagrant. Who of you uses a local server to develop? Yes. Who of you use a virtual machine? Okay, that's already a bit less, because if we want to talk about Vagrant, we need to get started with the roots of it. And Virtualbox is software to create virtual servers, software-wise. So once we download the free software, we get a user interface like this, and we can start adding machines to it. So I have one for a customer here, I have a default Debian machine, a Debian 6 machine, Windows machine even. And once you've set up these machines, it has easy wizards to go through to create them. You can just power up one of the machines. I don't know if this one would still work. Oh, can't find a shared folder. That's no problem. So here we have our virtual machine. We can just look into it and use it like we would on a normal server in a data center. But having these virtual machines could be a hassle if you're working with teams, because teams would have to copy each other's machines. If settings change, those settings need to be changed on all the copied virtual machines, which just doesn't make it any easier to work with them. Let's just shut this one down. So somebody came up with Vagrant. Vagrant is an easy way of describing your virtual machine in text, and text can be versioned. So those version files can be pulled from a repository like GitHub or anything else, and you just need to run the text file to get your virtual machine up. Once you get started with Vagrant, you need to have Virtualbox installed. And Vagrant 1.1 also supports VMware Fusion, so that's also a possibility. And let's just dive into the great documentation it has. It gets you started very quickly. So there is this default virtual machine called Precise32, which you can get via this URL. So once you've installed Vagrant, you go to your command line, you initialize the default machine, and then you will say Vagrant up, and your virtual machine will be running. So maybe we can do a little live demo. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but why not? Is the text clear enough?
Could you make this font bigger?
Yes.
So couldn't download the box, no problem, because we still have this one. So in here I already downloaded the box, and now we say Vagrant up, and then the magic happens. Throws a few warnings, but now it's downloading the base box. In this case it's called Debian Squeeze 64, and it will start copying the box to this local directory, and after that it will start provisioning. Now what is provisioning? It's starting to run a few scripts to install all the software you want on that box. So if you are, for instance, using a MySQL database, it will start installing it on this new box. If you later on want to switch to PostgreSQL or something else, you can just change the script, and all the users who do the Vagrant up command will get the new software for this system, so the new database software.
Didn't you have an SSD in your laptop?
No. But it should come up fairly quickly. You see, this takes a couple of seconds, but building your new image every time would take probably a day to get all the software running on it. So what we see now is that it's starting a provisioner. This is a shell provisioner. We will look into this right after it has started. Let's just let it run. Now it's starting to run the scripts to get the bug provision. We'll get back to that in a minute. Because how does the magic behind all this work? Well, once you create your new box, you have to create one file, which is the Vagrant file. Let's see if we can enlarge this a bit more. Yeah. So a Vagrant file is actually just a Ruby script. I know we're at the PHP meeting here, but I'm sorry, it's mostly Ruby. Within this Ruby file, if you do a Vagrant init, it will create a default template for you, which makes it easier. You give the box a name, which is your basic box name. So not the one provisioned with all the extra software, but it's just a Debian installation or maybe an Ubuntu installation. And you can add an URL where the box can be downloaded for the base box. After that, the configuration of the box starts. So let's just use this. Here we see the host name. For this case, it's omroepzeeland.dev. And we configure the network adapters. So we add a host-only network adapter and one with an IP address on which we can reach the box. Next thing we want to do is have some files of our project which we have on a local machine configured that it's shared with our virtual machine. So we are telling that we want to create a www connection for this destination folder, and this would be the local folder where the files are on my host machine. Another thing we can do is make Virtualbox specific configuration changes. So here we say we want to modify our virtual machine and we want to give it a set memory of 1 gigabyte. So once we have that set up, we actually have our box configured and we can start up our box with Vagrant up. Next step is provisioning. Well, let's get to that in just a minute, because where do you get your base boxes from? Well, there's this website, vagrantbox.es, which has a number of base boxes. You can see them here listed. So there are CentOS boxes, Debian boxes, a whole lot which you can get, and all you have to use is this URL. If you fill out that URL for the box URL, it will download that box and label it with the name you've given it here. So next up would be provisioning. Provisioning can be done, well actually what is provisioning? It is installing the software you want on your box by using a script. So there is two flavors. One is Puppet, created by Puppet Labs. Haven't used that one much, but there is an equivalent, which is called Chef, created by Opscode, and Chef works with all kinds of kitchen stuff. It uses a knife for creating recipes and, well, all kind of kitchen terms. We will look into that. For this box, I also used Chef, and the flavor of Chef is Chef Solo. You have a Chef Server, Chef Client, and Chef Solo. Chef Solo can run as a standalone product. And Chef depends on cookbooks. And what are cookbooks? They're actually a way of combining software into one certain flavor or brand. And cookbooks all have recipes. So for my Virtualbox, I want to add my cookbook folder with all these recipes. And on this machine, I'm installing apt, Git, OpenSSL, Apache 2, MySQL, MySQL Server, PHP, some Apache modules, and so on and so on. The last thing you need to add to Chef is JSON. JSON for configuration. So the recipes will sometimes need extra configuration. Like, let's say, the one we know best. The PHP recipe will need additional packages. We want to have pair installed, we want to have APC installed, the GD library. So all these packages we can configure that they will get installed upon starting the virtual machine. So let's see, this one is still provisioning. Do we see any? Yeah, here it's installing Drush for a Drupal project through the provisioning of the PHP packages.
Mind you, this is slow because his laptop is slow. In reality, this on my computer, which has an SSD, it's a minute or so.
Yeah, normally it would. Usually it's 20 seconds and the box will.
We don't want to disencourage people
do
using it. It's really fast, but it depends on the infrastructure.
Yeah, first run is usually slow because it has to download and install all the packages. But on the second run, it will see that it already has a lot of packages and it will skip the installation, and then it will run even faster. So now I have started my virtual machine here. So we can say Vagrant SSH. And now we see that we are on the Vagrant image we just created. So let's just see if it installed all the software. Like we added a recipe for varnish, it's been installed. Let's larger font. Apache 2 has been installed. So all the recipes we have added are now on this machine.
So would you then create chef recipes for your own project as well?
Sorry, for?
For your own project as well, to preload the database? And
Yep. Let's see. Let's just open up my PHP store. If you want some out-of-the-box recipes, Upscode also has the GitHub repository, which comes with cookbooks for like MySQL, Nginx, and a lot more. You can even set up a full Jenkins server through the cookbooks. Once you open up a cookbook, they have this documentation template, which is pretty easy to get used to. It always starts with the goal of the cookbook. It shows you the attributes which can be used to further configure the software for your personal preference. And this one has a lot of to-dos. Let's just take the Apache one. I know that one has to be good. So some have dependencies. This one luckily doesn't. It will show you which platforms it has been created for and tested on. But as we see, here we have the configuration options which we can use in our JSON. So let's see, I have one for Apache here, which tells to listen on the ports A. So if I look at my full output, I have the Vagrant file, which we were looking at just a minute ago, and I have my cookbooks folder. So for like Apache, I here have the Apache 2 recipe added, and the recipes are in the cookbooks. If you don't add the double semicolon here, it will take the default recipe. The default recipe is a most common setup. Well, you don't need to read the whole setup, but it's just to get the software on the machine. If you want to fine-tune stuff, you probably want to have additional recipes, like the PHP 5 recipe, which has to be added to the Apache 2 installation. So if you look into the recipes folder, you will see a lot of new recipes here. And here we have the PHP 5, which we will need for our development server to do actual PHP development. Let's see. Oh yeah. Of course, the question about having your own recipes. Like I created for the Omroep Zeeland project a recipe to add the database. So what it does here, it uses the database MySQL recipe, which is from the Upscode repositories, and then it defines the connection, which uses the JSON configuration from the Vagrant file, and then it connects to the database, and it will create the database with the name. So to create your own recipes, you have to know a bit of Ruby, or at least copy a bit of Ruby from somewhere. That worked for me, as you can see. And after that, you can run a script to load an SQL file, which gets read and placed into your database. So does that answer the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Is it possible to use bash scripts as recipes? It always has to be Ruby, or you have to wrap it up in Ruby.
You have to wrap it up in Ruby then.
Well, you can also use a PHP provider that uses a bash shell script or PHP script.
Like as we see here, we have another provisioner, which is not the chef one, and it uses the shell, and it just uses an inline script here. This one updates the chef gem, and then doesn't have yet to update. Same, you could do the same for a PHP script. So just use the shell provision to call PHP script to provision the machine. So once you have this all set up, like here for my own recipe, I use which directory is being used for the vhost, which server name. That's actually another recipe I created. Let's just see. So this one sets up actually the Apache. It uses a recipe as well, and it uses a template. And templates are actually pretty cool because your vhost will look mostly the same. You just want to define a few things. So in these templates you can place the server name. Like if someone would be working on myproject.local, another developer would be working on myproject.dev. It wouldn't be a problem because it's all configured in your Vagrant file. Everyone can use the host name they like and still have the same configuration. And we mostly see that the server name is used here and the document root. So having these templates is very easy for setting up your vhosts or other configuration files. Well, as you can see here, we assign the variable names by using the node from the Vagrant file. So that is actually what Vagrant does in a nutshell. It sets up virtual machines through the command line, but it makes it easy to version your Vagrant files, add the cookbooks as sub-modules. You can create your own cookbooks which are more generic and which you can configure further in your Vagrant file. And well, it makes development in teams manageable. So this was really an improvisation, but I hope you all will have great success with it. And well, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
How do you access the box? Where do you put something in your browser, or?
Yeah, let's see.
Well, basically what you do is you start up your Vagrant box in the directory where your project is, and you have there the config VM share folder, which automatically ties your current directory with the virtual machine.
Yeah, this is my local directory, and this would be the directory on the virtual machine.
So you keep developing in the latter one.
Sorry?
Well, you keep developing your files in the...
Yeah, I keep developing on my local machine here, and it makes a mapping to the virtual machine in the /var www folder. And if I want to access the Apache server, I can use this IP address, and if I look at my host file...
So the development remains on your local machine, and the box will only act as a development server.
It's basically an FS mount.
Yeah.
So here we have the same IP address, and it's attached to these host names, so I can access them.
So it doesn't work for a Windows machine?
Vagrant is available for Windows machines as well. And once you have Virtualbox set up, it will just load a Debian or even...
Just recently, Vagrant now offers support also for VMware.
Yeah.
So if you have VMware machines running, or you have VirtualBox machines running, it doesn't really matter. If it runs on your Windows machine, you can set up Vagrant to use that technology to run as a headless box on your platform that you choose on.
I think they're also going to do Amazon.
It's already done.
Already now.
Because I've seen a couple of communities now working on distribution of Vagrant boxes ready to use as a cluster within the EC2 space. So.
Any more questions?
The chef provisioning you give to Vagrant, can it be the same recipes that you use to set up like real machines?
Yeah, they can be
there's no difference in that it runs from Vagrant or just...
No. For this I used Chef Solo, but you can also use the Chef client server setup. for your Vagrant file, and it will run just the same as set up your virtual machine.
In a lot of cases, for larger setups, people have a separate Vagrant box for their Puppet Master or their Chef Master server. So you don't have to use your actual one. You can set up a Chef or Puppet server that acts like the actual Master server.
Yes, we use Drupal, and we have a lot of branches inside the same project. And when we install modules, the database will change, and sometimes very difficult to get the right SQL database running in the right Vagrant box with the right Git branch. Is there anything that can manage multiple SQL dumps and match them to the right Git branch without checking them empty Git and etc.? Anything that?
So let's see if I get the question right. You're using multiple branches of your Git repository.
Yeah.
And for each branch you have another database structure.
Yeah. For example, to keep it simple, we have a development branch where extra modules are running, but we also have the production database where these modules are not installed.
Okay, but you're using Drush, right?
Yeah.
So you could provision your development machines using a Vagrant file that enables these modules using Drush as a command with which you can provision it. And for your production machines you can use the other Vagrant file, because you can have multiple Vagrant files. That makes it so easy. And just provision them with not enabling those modules via Drush. Would that help, or?
Yeah, but it makes it a bit complex. Developers have to, when they enable modules, they have to know that they have to keep track of things in Vagrant, and they forget about it and
okay.
Work and stuff.
On the other hand, it's just Ruby. So you could create a recipe which would look at, let's say, for instance, the host name. If the host name for development is different, you could provision it in a different way. So once the developer would say Vagrant up, it would see, okay, I'm on a developer machine now. I'm going to enable the developer modules. So, well, it depends a little bit on what the exact things are that you want to do.
But you would still start from the production database now. Or would you keep multiple SQL dumps, for example?
Yeah.
Multiple.
I don't think that one SQL dump could
because with
handle
production,
different states of your project.
The production databases, dumps can get big. You don't want to check them, but I'm not sure where to store them. Either, so
yeah, it's a problem I'm still struggling with as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about it later and see if we can come up with a solution. But it's definitely something which is still hard to solve.
Now we also have something like you have the cookbook to install a database, but we are using Puppet, so it's a bit different. But
yeah,
it's the same approach.
Yeah, Puppet also works with a scripted environment, so there should be possibilities for it. Well, let's talk about it. Any more questions? No? Okay. Then I hope this little insight into Vagrant will help you to get it set up. And I'd like to thank you. And if you want to contact me, this is where to find. Thank you.
So thank you, Martin, for doing this on such short notice. So he did it in, what, 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10
Imagine what he could have done if he put in 2 hours. Thank you, Martin. So